The morning it happened, Charleston was still half asleep beneath a misty drizzle. The kind of quiet gray morning when the air smells of wet magnolia and everything feels unhurried. Raymond sat at the kitchen table, buttering his toast, teasing me for burning it again. "Eleanor," he laughed, shaking his head. "One day you'll set off the fire alarm trying to make breakfast for two. Then you'll get to scold me from the other side of the kitchen, as usual," I replied, rolling my eyes. It was an ordinary moment. That was the cruelest part, how utterly ordinary it all was before the phone rang. The call came just after 8:30. A voice I didn't recognize asked if I was Mrs. Pierce. Then words tumbled through the receiver: accident, Ravenel Bridge, truck collision, critical condition. For a second, I thought they had the wrong number. Raymond had left barely 20 minutes earlier to drop off paperwork at the harbor office. By the time I reached the hospital, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely sign the forms. The air smelled of antiseptic and coffee, and the clock above the reception desk ticked too loud, as if it knew time was running out. Dr. Patel met me outside the ICU. His voice was careful, almost rehearsed. "Mrs. Pierce, your husband suffered massive internal injuries. We're doing everything we can, but you should call your family." I nodded, numb, and dialed Ethan. It rang several times before he picked up, his voice casual, distracted. "Mom, can this wait? We're setting up for Lydia's mom's birthday. You know how she gets about timing." I pressed the phone tighter. "Ethan," I said slowly, "your father's been in an accident. He's in surgery. It's bad." There was silence, then a sigh. "It's her 60th, Mom. Can I come tomorrow morning?" For a moment, I couldn't speak. The words didn't fit the world I was standing in, the beeping monitors, the smell of blood and disinfectant, the man I'd loved for 42 years fighting for his life down the hall. "Your father might not have tomorrow," I whispered. But Ethan just said, "I'll call you later," and the line went dead. 2 hours later, Dr. Patel returned, eyes heavy. "I'm sorry," he said simply. Raymond's hand was still warm when I took it in mine, whispering, "He waited for you, Ethan." Outside, the drizzle had stopped. Charleston's sunlight spilled across the wet pavement, cruelly bright, as if the city itself refused to grieve with me. The day of the funeral felt like walking through someone else's dream. The Charleston sky was pale and heavy, threatening rain that never came. The church smelled of lilies and damp wood, and every sound, the shuffling of feet, the closing of hymn books, seemed to echo too loud. Raymond's casket sat near the altar, draped in the old Navy flag he'd kept, folded in our attic since retirement. The sight of it made my throat tighten. He'd always said he wanted a simple service, no fuss, no speeches, but I hadn't imagined it would also mean no son. I kept glancing at the door, waiting for Ethan. Each time it opened, my heart jumped and fell again. By the third hymn, I stopped looking. He wasn't coming. After the service, people lined up to whisper condolences I barely heard. "He was a good man. He loved you so much. Your son must be devastated." I smiled politely, nodding as if Ethan's grief were somewhere in the room, hidden behind the pews. But it wasn't. It was in another house, somewhere across town, wrapped in balloons and birthday cake. When I finally returned home that evening, the house felt like a mausoleum. Raymond's slippers were still by the door, his reading glasses beside the newspaper he'd never finish. I sat at the kitchen table where he used to sip coffee and tried to imagine him there, laughing about something trivial. Then my phone buzzed. A notification. Lydia's face filled the screen, her wide smile, her glass of champagne raised high. The caption read, "Best birthday ever. Love my hubby and family so much." The photo had been posted 3 hours earlier, the exact time the minister had been saying the final prayer over Raymond's coffin. I dropped the phone. It clattered across the tile, face down. For a long moment, I just stared at it, my chest hollow. There was no anger yet, only disbelief, a quiet unraveling inside me that felt worse than rage. At the reception the next day, one of Raymond's old colleagues, Tom Dillard, approached me hesitantly. He said, "Eleanor, I'm sorry if this isn't the time, but Ray mentioned helping Ethan out again. He seemed worried. I thought you should know." Helping him out again? The words sank deep. Raymond hadn't told me about money in years. We'd promised no secrets after our mortgage was finally paid off. I felt the first cold crack of suspicion run through my grief. That night, I poured a glass of wine and sat staring at the empty chair across from me. "You were trying to warn me, weren't you, Ray?" I whispered. The silence that answered felt heavier than the grave. The next morning, the house was too quiet. Even the clock above the mantel seemed hesitant to tick. I wandered from room to room like a ghost, touching the things Raymond had left behind, his jacket on the coat rack, his mug on the counter, his glasses beside the folded newspaper. Every object whispered the same thing. He's gone, but not finished. When dusk fell, I walked into his study. It smelled faintly of cedar and engine oil, the scent of his old workshop days. I hadn't stepped inside since the accident. The desk was spotless, drawers neatly closed, files labeled with his sharp engineer's handwriting. He had always kept everything precise, like the ships he once designed. No clutter, no mess, no surprises. But as I ran my hand along the edge of the desk, my fingers brushed against a small strip of masking tape beneath the top drawer. I pulled it back and found a brass key taped underneath, along with a folded note in his handwriting. "For Eleanor, if something happens." My heart hammered as I unlocked the bottom drawer. Inside lay a single navy blue folder, its corners worn and smudged. On the tab, in firm block letters, "Ethan transfers." I sat down, opened it, and felt my world tilt. There were dozens of printed bank statements, neatly stacked in chronological order. Each showed transfers from Raymond's account to Ethan's. 2,000 here, 5,000 there. Each line item tagged with vague descriptions: consulting fee, emergency rent, medical loan. The most recent one, $12,000, was labeled Lydia's family expenses. At the back of the folder lay a folded sheet of yellow paper. The handwriting made my breath catch. It was Raymond's, written in the same pen he always used to jot grocery lists. The note was addressed simply, "Ethan, this is the third time you've lied about where the money is going. I've kept quiet because your mother believes the best in you, but I'm running out of excuses. If I find out you've used our trust against her again, I'll stop helping you altogether. Don't make me choose between my son and my integrity." It wasn't signed, but I didn't need a signature. The ache in his words was enough. I sat there for a long time, the letter trembling in my hands, until tears blurred the ink. Raymond had been trying to hold everything together behind my back to protect me from the truth, and now I understood why he'd looked so tired the week before the accident. He hadn't just been carrying age or work. He'd been carrying betrayal. I folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the folder, and whispered into the dim room, "You won't have to protect me anymore, Ray. I'll finish what you started." 5 days after the funeral, I heard the sound of tires on gravel. When I looked out the window, Ethan's car was in the driveway. Lydia sat inside with sunglasses on, idling the engine, her posture impatient. It was the first time he had come by since his father's death. I opened the door before he could knock. He stood there holding a bouquet of supermarket lilies, their petals already drooping. "Mom," he said softly, "I'm sorry I couldn't make it sooner. Things have been hectic." I stepped aside, wordless, and he followed me into the living room. The air between us was heavy with unspoken things. Raymond's armchair still faced the window, untouched since that morning. Ethan glanced at it and quickly looked away. I gestured for him to sit. He perched on the edge of the couch, tapping the flowers against his knee like a nervous metronome. "Lydia wanted to come, but she's not great with grief," he began. "You know how emotional she gets." I nodded slowly, slipping my phone into the pocket of my cardigan and pressing the record button. My voice came out steady, calm, practiced. "Did you know your father called you the night before the accident?" I asked. He hesitated. "He did? I must have missed it. We were having dinner at Lydia's parents'. It was her mom's birthday. Big thing. You know how they are." I said nothing. The silence stretched long enough that he began to squirm. "He should have texted," he muttered, as if that made it better. Then I opened the blue folder and laid it on the coffee table between us. The sound of paper against wood made him flinch. "What's that?" "Your father's bank records." He stiffened. "Mom, if you're worried about—" "I'm not worried," I said. "I'm informed." I slid the yellow letter across to him. He wrote this 2 weeks before he died. Ethan unfolded it, read a few lines, and exhaled sharply through his nose. "Dad misunderstood. We were helping Lydia's parents with some medical bills. He overreacted." I met his eyes. He understood perfectly. "You lied to him, and to me." His jaw tightened. "You don't know the whole story." "No," I said quietly. "But I know enough." Outside, Lydia honked the car horn twice sharp, impatient. Ethan rose, leaving the flowers on the couch like an afterthought. "Let's talk another day, okay?" I opened the door for him. "There won't be another day, Ethan." He blinked, confused, but said nothing as he left. The car pulled away, disappearing down the oak-lined street. I looked at the fading taillights and whispered to the empty room, "You just wrote yourself out of our story." The next morning, the air in Charleston felt different, cooler, sharper, like the city itself had decided to shed its humidity and start over. I woke before dawn, brewed coffee I didn't drink, and gathered the folder, Raymond's letter, and my phone with the recorded conversation. By 8, I was sitting in the polished wood office of Alton Reed, our family attorney and Raymond's oldest friend. Alton was in his 70s now, white-haired, kind-eyed, the sort of man who never needed to raise his voice to make people listen. When he saw me walk in clutching that blue folder, his smile faltered. "Eleanor," he said softly, "I was going to call and check on you this week." I placed the folder on his desk. "I'm here to change my will." He paused. "Already?" I met his gaze. "It can't wait." We sat in silence for a moment before I told him everything, the transfers, the lies, the phone call from the hospital, the letter Raymond had written but never sent. He didn't interrupt once. Only when I finished did he lean back and exhale, slow and deliberate. "I suspected something," he admitted. "Raymond came to me a few months ago about Ethan's financial issues. He wanted to revise some paperwork but never got the chance." I nodded. "Then I will." Alton opened his legal pad. "Tell me what you want." I laid it out clearly, without hesitation. Every asset, our home, our savings, Raymond's stocks, the pension account, would go into a living trust for Sophie, our granddaughter. The trust would remain sealed until she turned 25, with partial access for college or housing. Not a dollar would pass through Ethan or Lydia's hands. And I wanted a clause if either of them tried to challenge the trust, they'd forfeit every legal right to contact, control, or claim guardianship over Sophie's assets until the trust dissolved. Alton frowned slightly. "You're protecting her." "Yes," I said, "from her own parents." He hesitated, pen hovering. "Eleanor, this will burn bridges you can't rebuild." I looked out the window. The harbor shimmered in the distance, sunlight cutting through the fog. Those bridges collapsed the moment my son chose a birthday party over his father's deathbed. When I signed the new documents, my hands didn't tremble. For the first time since Raymond's accident, I felt something close to steady. Not peace exactly, but purpose. Before I left, I handed Alton an envelope labeled, "For Sophie," to be opened at 18. "It's not about money," I said. "It's about truth." He nodded, sealing the file. "Raymond would be proud of you, Eleanor." Outside, the wind carried the faint smell of salt and jasmine. I whispered to the air, "I hope he's listening." A week passed before the storm broke. It came quietly, disguised as an ordinary afternoon. I was pruning the hydrangeas when I noticed an envelope wedged inside my mailbox. No return address, just my name written in neat, careful handwriting. Sophie's handwriting. Inside was a small black flash drive and a sticky note that read, "Grandma, I think you should hear this. Please don't tell Dad." My heart started pounding. I took it inside, locked the door, and plugged it into my laptop. A folder popped open, audio recordings. Each file was dated over the past month. The first one was titled, "Dinner, June 12." I clicked play. Lydia's voice filled the room, sharp and smooth like glass. "Your mother's not well, Ethan. She's getting forgetful. If she makes one wrong move, we can petition the court to step in. Mental incompetence is easy to prove at her age." Ethan's voice followed, quieter, tired. "Do we really need to go that far?" "We need to protect Sophie's future," Lydia replied. "And ours." I froze. My hand hovered over the mouse, unable to move. The second recording began automatically. Ethan again. "Mom changed her will. I can feel it. She's been meeting with Reed." Lydia laughed a small, ugly sound. "Then we'll make Reed question her state of mind. Old people and grief, it's textbook. I've seen it on shows." I stopped breathing. The sound of clinking dishes in the background made it worse the normalcy of evil, hidden beneath dinner conversations. The third file broke me. It wasn't Lydia or Ethan speaking. It was Sophie. Her voice was barely a whisper, the phone mic close to her mouth. "I know what they're planning, Grandma. I'm saving this so you'll have proof. I believe you." I pressed my hand against my mouth to keep from crying out. That little girl, 11 years old, had been living in that house, hearing things no child should hear, quietly recording them to protect me. I sat there for a long time, the laptop screen glowing in the dim light. When I could finally move, I copied the entire folder twice, one for Alton, one for my home safe. Then I wrote another letter to Sophie. "If anything ever happens to me before you're grown, this is your truth. Never let anyone make you doubt what you heard." That night, I sat in Raymond's chair and held the flash drive in my palm like a fragile relic. "You'd be proud of her, Ray," I whispered into the dark. "She's braver than both of us." And for the first time since the accident, I didn't feel alone. The letter came on a Tuesday morning formal, printed on heavy cream paper. Ethan and Lydia were contesting the trust. They claimed I was mentally unfit when I signed the documents. I stared at the words until the ink blurred. Then I called Alton. He didn't sound surprised. "They've hired a firm downtown. Mediation will be required before a formal hearing," he said gently. "Are you ready for this?" "I was ready the day he hung up on me," I replied. 2 weeks later, we sat in a conference room that smelled faintly of lemon polish and air conditioning. A round glass table, a bowl of mints, bottled water lined neatly in a row, sterile civility before war. Ethan looked smaller than I remembered. His shoulders slumped, his suit hung loose. Lydia, though, was all poise, hair perfect, smile rehearsed. She sat beside him, clutching a folder thick with papers, her nails clicking against its cover like a metronome. The mediator, a calm woman in a navy blazer, began softly. "We're here to discuss Mrs. Pierce's estate and the concerns raised by her son and daughter-in-law. Let's proceed respectfully." Lydia jumped in first. We love Eleanor dearly, but grief can cloud judgment. She's been confused, paranoid even. We're only trying to ensure fairness. Fairness. The word tasted sour. I said nothing. Instead, I reached into my bag, removed the blue folder, and slid it across the table. Alton followed with a USB drive in a labeled envelope. Evidence July recordings. The mediator glanced between us. What is this? Proof, I said simply, of intent, of manipulation. The room went silent as the audio played. Lydia's own voice filled the air. We'll make Reed question her state of mind. Ethan's voice followed. Weak, complicit. Lydia's face drained of color. Those are private conversations taken out of context. The mediator paused the recording. Mrs. Pierce, she said calmly, these demonstrate clear, undue influence. The trust remains legally sound. Ethan pressed his palms together, staring at the floor. Mom, I didn't know she was recording, he muttered. No, I said softly. You didn't know your daughter was listening. For a long moment, no one spoke. Lydia stood abruptly, gathering her things. This isn't over, she snapped, storming out. Her heels clicked down the hallway like a gavel hitting marble. Ethan stayed seated, trembling slightly. I never meant for it to go this far. I stood, steady and calm. That's the difference between us, Ethan. You never mean it until it's too late. When I left the building, the sunlight hit my face, and for the first time in months, it didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. 5 years later, Charleston bloomed with azaleas again. The same streets that once felt haunted were now alive with laughter and sunlight. I stood on the porch that morning, watching Sophie step out of the car in her graduation gown, her smile as steady as the tide. She was 18 now, taller, wiser, with the same quiet strength I'd once seen in Raymond. She held an envelope in her hand. My envelope. For Sophie, to be opened at 18. Grandma, she said softly, I wanted to read it with you. We sat together at the kitchen table, the same place where so much had ended and begun. She carefully unsealed the letter, unfolding each page like it was made of glass. I watched her eyes move over my handwriting, her expression shifting from curiosity to tears. When she finished, she looked up, voice trembling. You really did all this for me? I nodded. For you, and for your future, and for your father, even if he doesn't know it yet. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I always believed you, even when they said you were confused. A laugh broke from me, soft and shaky. You saved me, Sophie. You were the only one brave enough to tell the truth. Later that afternoon, we drove to her graduation ceremony. The auditorium was packed, the air warm with pride and possibility. When her name was called Sophie Eleanor Pierce, I felt my chest tighten. She had changed her middle name months earlier without telling me. When she crossed the stage, she looked right at me and smiled through her tears. In the crowd, I spotted Ethan sitting in the back row, alone, his head bowed, clapping quietly. He didn't approach us afterward. He didn't need to. Some distances can't be bridged by apologies. They have to be lived through. That night, Sophie and I sat on the porch, the air humming with crickets and sea breeze. She leaned against my shoulder and whispered, I got into Vanderbilt, pre-law. I want to help people like you, people who need someone to speak up for them. I smiled, blinking against the sting in my eyes. Then you'll do what I couldn't for your father. You'll turn pain into purpose. She rested her head on my arm. I learned it from you. As the moonlight washed over the garden, I looked toward the stars and whispered, She's going to be all right, Ray. We both are. Lesson. Love is not proven by words or gifts, it's proven by showing up when it matters. Silence may protect you for a while, but truth endures far longer. In the end, justice isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's a quiet girl pressing record to save what's left of a family's soul.